Hello, this is Prasad here. Today I'm going to show you how you can create a custom approval history using Power Automate approval flow. Okay, as part of our SharePoint site, we have a procurement request. We are going to use this procurement request in order to procure any goods or any devices that we would like to procure. And then we'll be submitting this request to finance team for approval. So we'll be writing a approval flow using Power Automate. And as part of this flow, whenever approvers take actions to the flow, we would like to record their activities as workflow history. So in order to record those activities, we will go to site contents and see and create a list called approval history. So in this example, I've already created a list called approval history. Um, And as part of this list, I've created these different columns. So created is a default column in SharePoint, which will tell us when this record was actually created. Action taken on will show us when exactly an approver has taken an action on the approval card. Action taken by shows who was the approver who took an action and the status of an approval of that approver, and then action comments will be recorded here. And then we have a request ID. Request ID is a common ID between our procurement request and approval history, just to join these two different lists, so that in case we would like to present this historical approval history in any dashboard form, we can join these two different lists and then generate a nice dashboard. Okay, so let's go back to our flow. And within flow, I'm using when an item is created trigger to just trigger this flow. I have already configured start and wait for approval action, where uh, I have simple approve reject scenario. I'm assigning this task to myself and with just details as testing. I'm just gonna change the title to finance approval. Okay, so at this point, I would like to add actions to generate approval history. So what I'm going to do is, before this approval action, I'm going to add an action to create a list item. And I'm going to choose my SharePoint site and approval history list. Okay. Now I'm going to give a title as finance approval. I don't have any action taken date now because I haven't taken any action or approval details or action status, etc. Okay, in action status, I'm going to populate it as pending. No action comments at this point. And request ID, I'm going to select ID from our item. Okay, so at this point, I have created an entry in our approval history list, which will show that an approval is pending. Okay, then comes our approval task. Now, after an approval has taken an action, um, we have to update the history item that we have created here. So let's use in condition, and within the condition, let's check outcome of an approval. So if outcome is equal to approve, then I'm going to use update item action here. Let's use our SharePoint site and approval history list. And for ID, I'm going to use ID from create item. Okay. Now, since this is update action, we have to populate the title because it's required field. So I'm going to use the same title, finance approval. Action taken on, and I'm going to select completion date from my approval action. Action taken by claims, here we have to populate approver email. So let's go ahead and select responses approver email. And now it will automatically put a apply to each loop against our action, because responses is a collection. So it needs to be wrapped in apply to each loop. Okay. And further, going to action status, I'm going to say approved. And action comments, let's map it to response approver comments. And we already have request ID. So let's select request ID from our trigger. Okay. Now let's copy this apply to each and paste it in no clause. And let's change status to rejected. Okay, so we have our flow ready. Let's go ahead and test it. So let's go to our request list and submit a new request. Okay, so I'm just gonna say procuring desktop, procurement amount, let's say $5,000. Details of procurement, procuring a desktop. Save it. Okay, so let's see how our flows hasn't kicked off yet. Okay, so there you go. The flow is running now. Let's go ahead and go to our history list. I don't see any item created yet. Okay, so we can see a second row created here for the request ID 2 for finance approval, and status is pending. So let's go ahead and go to our approval section to approve our card. So I have an approval card here for finance approval. Let's go ahead and approve it. In the comments, I will say looks good, approved. Let's click confirm. Okay, so approval has been recorded, and let's go to our flow. It's succeeded, and let's go to our history and refresh it. Okay, so as you can see, we have action taken on date recorded, action taken by is recorded, the actual status is recorded, comments is recorded. We are all good. So using this mechanism, you can create a tabular format of approval history, which you can use in Power BI to generate a nice dashboard. You can generate cycle time reports using this by doing a math on action taken on and created. Thank you, everyone.